the snow globe on my father's desk, there was a penguin wearing a red and white striped scarf. When I was little, my father would pull me into his lap and reach for the snow globe. He would turn it over, letting all the snow collect on the top and then quickly invert it. Together, we'd watch the snow gently fall around the penguin. But the penguin was alone in there, I thought, and I worried for him. When I told my father this, he said, "Don't worry, Susie. He has a nice life. He lives in a perfect world." According to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, 800,000 children go missing every year. This number equates to 2,000 children every single day. That number is horrifying. Susie Salmon is a 14-year-old girl who was kidnapped, raped, and murdered by someone in her neighborhood everybody trusted. Now she's stuck in heaven, watching over her family and trying to point them towards the killer. The Lovely Bones by Alice Sebold. When I first entered heaven, I thought everyone saw what I saw. That in everyone's heaven there were soccer goalposts in the distance, and that there were buildings like suburban Northeast high schools built in the 1960s. But in my heaven, I couldn't have what I wanted most. Mr. Harvey dead, and me living. Heaven wasn't perfect, but I came to believe that if I watched closely and desired, I might change the lives of those I loved on earth. Oh, my name was Salmon, like the fish. First name, Susie. On December 6th, 1973, I was murdered. That day, it was snowing, and I took a shortcut through the cornfield back from junior high. It was dark out because the days were shorter in the winter, and I remember how the broken corn stalks made my walk more difficult. 6 feet from where Mr. Harvey stood, I stuck out my tongue to catch a snowflake. You're the older Salmon girl, right? Susie? Sorry, I didn't mean to startle you. I'm just your neighbor. I built something back here. Would you like to see? The natural authority of his age and the added fact that he was a neighbor and had spoke to my father about fertilizer rooted me to the spot. I wish now that I had known this was weird. He said it would only take a minute, so I followed him a little further into the cornfield. I can still see the hole like it was yesterday. It was the size of a small room, the mud room in my house. I could stand up in it, but Mr. Harvey had to stoop. He created a bench along the sides of it by the way he dug it out. I stared at it in amazement. Mr. Harvey asked me if I would like a refreshment. I said I had to go home. My mom likes me home before dark and it's after. What makes you think you're leaving? I talked so that I would not have to take in this knowledge. Mr. Harvey made me feel icky now that he was blocking the door. I fought as hard as I could, but my hard as I could wasn't hard enough. And soon, I was on the ground with him on top of me, and he was sweating, and he was panting, and he put his lips to mine, and I want you, Susie. No, 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 please, Afterwards, he leaned to the side and felt the dugout shelf above him and brought back a knife.
Tell me you love me.
Gently, I did. And the end came anyways. It would be some time before I realized what you've undoubtedly already assumed, that I wasn't the first girl he'd killed. He knew to remove my body from the field. He knew to watch the weather and to kill during the arc of light to heavy precipitation because that would rob the police of evidence. But he was not as fastidious as the police like to believe. He forgot my elbow. And if someone, anyone, had been watching, maybe they would have thought it weird to see their stranger walk a property line that was a tight fit, even for children who like to pretend that wearing hedges were hideouts. In the hours after I was murdered, as my mother made phone calls and my father began going door to door, Mr. Harvey had collapsed the hole in the cornfield and carried away a sack filled with my body parts. He carried me back to his house where, while I waited, he went inside to wash up. After the house changed hands, the new owners tisk-tisked at the dark spot on the floor of their garage. The realtor said it was just an oil stain, but it was me, seeping out of the bag Mr. Harvey had carried and spilling onto the concrete. Soon, rumors of Mr. Harvey's suspected guilt began to make their way from neighbor to neighbor. Was it possible? Could the strange man that had been living among them all this time really have killed Susie Salmon? It wasn't long before the truth was revealed. My name was Salmon, like the fish. First name Susie. I was murdered on December 6th, 1973, and on December 18th, I watched Mr. Harvey leave his house for the last time. Thank you.